Amin likes to remind me that I have a well-shaped bald head.
Well, you know it's true because Amin doesn't like to give compliments. So a compliment from Amin, it matters a lot. This is my issue to get into some media criticism as I awkwardly take off my jacket right now.
That's how nicely shaped my bald head is. Yeah.
That's how I got it. It's heating up.
Ooh, it's getting hot in here.
Take off the jacket. Pat McAfee, he compliments every athlete, and every now and again he'll do some defense of an athlete. It means nothing to me. It means nothing. Unless you're crushing people, then the compliment has some validity. But that's how I feel. If Amin gives you a compliment, you know it's true. It can't not be.
So we're already talking about currency inflation, compliment inflation. You know, Pat McAfee is giving out too many compliments and therefore devaluing the value of that compliment. And so you're saying Amin is, 10x on the currency conversion board. I'm down with that. I like that.
No, it's true with a few different people. I feel like if I got a compliment from Haralabah Vulgaris, I would feel like, okay, that's a very legitimate compliment.
Why? Why? Because he makes bets for a living. So if you're doing well, or if he likes you, you have like insight on things.
Well, Bob's an interesting one because the times I've met him in person, very nice, just very nice guy. But he's got an intimidation factor to him because he's prickly over Twitter. He's not somebody who suffers fools, right? So I feel like if I got an online compliment from him, that really means something. He's in my top 5 of the compliment means something. I'm putting Bob there. I'm putting Amin there. I could come up with some other people, some people who are just, there are withholding fathers of the internet, right? Where we just want their love. We just want them to say something nice about us. And when they say it, it just feels like we've actually accomplished something. So I could come up with a few others. I could think up a few. I'm thinking about it right now. No, this is bad podcasting. Welcome to House of Strauss. We've got Tom Haberstroh on of The Finder. He has just written just an incredible piece, man. I think every NBA fan should read this. They should read, obviously, the piece you wrote earlier on the NBA scoring drought that I referenced. But this one right here, and let's just set the whole stage. Let's clue people in if they don't know about it. NBA scoring was exploding this season, more scoring than ever. A little something happened. Maybe it was before the All-Star break. Maybe it was at the All-Star break. But a just precipitous plunge. And one that was pronounced enough that you started talking about it. Other people started talking about it. The gamblers started to notice it. Bill Simmons talked about it. And you have
Bill Simmons talked about you. Okay. He talked about you. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Kevin Pelton and Lowe talked about you. People talk about things, but this isn't about us. It's about the NBA, Tom. It's about the integrity of the game. You did something. I'm so glad you did it because here's what's interesting to me. The scoring plunged. The foul rates plunged. The NBA is getting asked about it. And they are saying, according to Mark Stein, an NBA spokesman, when I lodged a formal request for comment, told Steinline on Monday that there has been no directive from the league office to referees to call games differently. The league's position then is that we have witnessed a statistical anomaly over the past few weeks with a myriad possible causes. I've seen similar statements from the league that this is all random. You went through in your most recent article and you proved, I think, this is not random. Right? This is just something that cannot be random. And this is my monologue to set it up, and then we can actually have the guest speak. But I'm just looking at the article. You relay a stat where it just happened, and about 2,000 NBA games have been played since the last time it happened, and then it happened again seconds later. Can you elaborate on this? And then we get into this topic. Yeah, so if you want, you can read it at tomthefinder.com, covering the NBA for the last decade or so. And I just launched the Substack to get back to writing over the last couple of years. I hadn't been writing as much, doing the podcasting stuff.
And I really wanted to get back to writing and covering the league and the kind of data-driven statistical analysis and kind of trends in the league. And this league has been offering a lot of opportunities to kind of explore what the heck is going on. When we talk about the scoring surge where Luka's scoring 73, Joel Embiid scoring 70, 50-pointer here, a 50-burger there, it seemed like we had reached a boiling point, a tipping point in the NBA where people were like, hey, this is a little too much. Yeah. We had people on, I think you've written about it, Stephen A. Smith, or whether it's on PTI, is like, this is getting a little out of control. And in the backdrop is the NBA is trying to negotiate their next TV deal. In the backdrop, we're trying to figure out who's the next face of the NBA. Is it, going to be Victor Wembanyama, Anthony Edwards? A lot of uncertainty in the league right now. And all the while, suddenly, the bottom dropped out in scoring. And I remember seeing the tweet from Ben Fox, who's got a Substack he just launched. He had said that since the All-Star break, Vegas over-unders, the under was cashing at 71% of the time. That is wild. That is wild.
I didn't give the proper response to that. That's really more of a damn. It's really more of a Tom, you should have tipped me off. We could have been rich. We could have retired. Jesus.
If you had known that there was a change in the system, you could have been very rich and basically bet the house on the unders. If you had known that foul calls were going to drop by 10, 15%, that 6 points per game is just going to vanish from the peak of 116 per game to about 110 where it's at right now. That's 6 points in Vegas that you can really leverage to your edge, right? Yeah. And so it gets really tricky here is the idea of if there was a refereeing change, and the NBA has denied that there's been any sort of edict to referees to allow more physicality, to stop calling fouls, and we'll get into that later. But a GM called me yesterday and said, what if someone had that information? What if someone at the league office knew, or a referee knew that, hey, we're going to start, calling fewer fouls, or, hey, we're going to let them play more. And someone went to go bet that. That's a huge leak in the system. And that insider information could be very powerful in the marketplace. Yeah. And this GM wasn't suggesting that it did happen, but these are questions that are happening in the league now that gambling is such a big part of the conversation. Closing those cracks in the system is super important because if you know that the whole scoring system in the NBA is going to change either in any direction, that can be very valuable for a bettor.
Yeah, and it's ever more precarious when the most famous photograph of league rule man Joe Dumars is of him speaking on two phones simultaneously. Who's on the other end of that phone? Who knows? Who's been tipped off to what Joe might know? I wish I was friends with Joe Dumars in anticipation of these changes that only allegedly happen. But Tom, we have to redirect you a bit because I mentioned something from your article. What happened?
Oh, yeah.
That has not happened in 2,000 games and then happened again.
So I was on the Portland broadcast last night and my phone blew up and someone said, have you seen the Cleveland score? And I was like, just sitting there and like in a commercial break or whatever. I clicked over and saw that Cleveland, the Cavs, had finished their third quarter with 0 free throw attempts. And I was like, what? I don't think I've ever seen that. Is a team going through entire first half and the third quarter without taking a free throw? And then someone else goes, dude, look at the Hornets. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, look at the Hornets. And I'm like, okay. I click over to the Hornets box score. The same thing happened to the Hornets. Yeah. Independent of each other, 2 different games on the same night in the NBA. 2 teams had played 3 full quarters without going to the free throw line. I had never really seen that before or remembered that before. And so after the game last night, I went and looked up all the times that it happened this year. It hadn't happened this year. This statistical oddity of a game going into the fourth quarter without a single free throw hadn't happened yet this season. And the only time it happened last year was in October. So we had gone through basically 2 full seasons of this extreme outlier happening. And then it happened 5 minutes later. So we've been on this, you and I, Ethan, we've been noticing that referees seem to be not calling those 50-50 calls and letting them play. And I think we both come into this with a positive reaction. I think this might be good.
Well, that's the wrinkle in all of this, right? That's the weird irony to it. This is what I want. I just suddenly feel better about the NBA. When I see scores,
because the games are at 90 to 95 or 102 to 98.
A possession feels real. The lack of inflation feels better. I'm more into it. This is what I want, but it's happening through very shady mechanisms without honesty surrounding it. And that's the odd wrinkle to it all, where so you mentioned this part. I know on Lowe's podcast with Pelton, February was the 3rd lowest free throw rate month in NBA history. Do I have that correct? Is that correct?
That is correct. And
look, Tom, I'm not going to tell you how to run your business. I am pro paywalling in general. I think if you've got something good, it's good to have it behind the paywall. I might encourage you to unpaywall this one tomorrow because it's a smoking gun. When the league is saying that we haven't done anything, we haven't directed the referees, this is anomalous. No. I mean, no. Nobody believes this. Nobody behind the scenes believes this. And even beyond whatever they believe, that's more fuzzy and subjective. You can't have results like this without a change in policy. You can't have more than 2,000 games pass between no free throws or no foul calls. There's no free throws or no foul calls in the first 3 quarters.
No shooting free throw. No shooting. I got scrambled there too. No shooting foul calls for the New Orleans Pelicans when they were playing the Cavs last night. And the Cavs are good. Like, this isn't like the Detroit Pistons here. This is one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference that went with Donovan Mitchell in his return the entire game with no more than 3 free throws. They finished with 3 free throws in this game. And if you look that up, Ethan, that is the lowest that they've had as a team in any game since 1994.
You can't have these results without a directive. This is not just random. This is not just anomaly. It's impossible. I'm just going to go ahead and say they're lying. I'm sorry. That's what it looks like. I'm going to say it looks like they're lying. And to me, it gets at this other question, because I'm talking with GMs too about all this, which is, why wouldn't they just admit it or make it plausible that they had a connection to it? That's the part I'm uncomfortable with. I love the change. I think it's really cool. I like that it's basketball that's more familiar and the game feels not as cheapened. And I instantly want to watch more of it right now due to the change. The part I don't like is how they'll not admit that they made this positive change. And I know they're not supposed to make a change mid-season outside of a board of governors meeting. But I mean, you could BS this a little bit. Well, admitting the truth, Adam Silver could go, look, we looked at the rules and how games were being called at the All-Star break, and we wanted to make sure we spoke to the refs. We didn't change the rules, but we wanted them to call it more by the book.
Back to basketball.
Back to basketball. And it appears that it's had an effect. Like something like that, right? There's something odd about not being able to just concede to a truth everybody sees. And again, I love the result. The process right here, maybe I shouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth, but that there's so much dishonesty in the process to me is what is unsettling, because it's like, okay, well, what else is screwy? What I've been hearing from GMs is that they don't want to admit that they have this degree of control because then people will know that they have this degree of control over the outcome, and they want the outcomes to exist or seem like they exist independent of league directive. Is that something that you believe, or do you have another theory on why they won't just admit to reality here?
Well, I think first of all, I'm not going to say they're lying. I just want to say that,
to be clear, I'm going to say, here's my official House of Strauss position. It really, 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 really looks like they're lying. That's the official House of Strauss position, not the official Tom position. That's the official HOS position.
Well, I think, first of all, the NBA has this thing called points of emphasis, where they do have the head of officiating, Monty McCutcheon, periodically throughout the season re-emphasize. It's not points of invention where they're going to invent a new rule. It's just emphasizing the existing rules that they had kind of tweaked on in the offseason, and just giving people a reminder publicly and for the teams, points of emphasis. And he does these videos every month or so. And it's kind of just reiterating. It's kind of, your coach just being like, hey, keep the main thing here. Like, this is our game plan. These are our principles, and let's just stick to them. In the points of emphasis, it's not saying, hey, we're going to cut down on defensive 3 seconds by 50% in the next month. Defensive 3 seconds is the NBA's rule to prevent illegal defense, to not allow the defense to camp out in the paint. And they used to call this a lot more in the NBA, and now it's being called about 50% less than they did a couple months ago. That's a huge change. And what that is like an NBA team being like, hey, if they're not going to call this, we're just going to break the rules constantly and dare them to call it, right?
This is the big thing that you're revealing right here, which is, and my God, Tom, man up and admit that this is shady, right? Like, come on, this is not random. That's what I'm saying to you. But you're revealing it's not just about helping defenses. It's swallow the whistle in general is what's happened. So
it's across the board. And that was the big reveal for me was someone had told me or tipped me off to the shooting fouls. And I looked at the shooting fouls and I was like, oh my gosh, look at that fall off a cliff. And I go into the data and I'm like, oh, it's shooting fouls. And then I kind of poked around some more and looked at other areas of the game that officials have control over. And technical fouls are down significantly. They're not calling as many techs out there. I heard from a referee source who's not a ref currently, but that studies refereeing. And they said that they had heard that there was some chatter about how tees had gotten out of control. And we don't want to be ejecting people so quickly. And we want to kind of limit the number of techs, that referees are basically influencing games a little bit too much on that side. And we need to calm that down a bit. Well, the data says that absolutely is happening. Techs are down. Non-shooting fouls are down. So off the ball, grabbing, not in a shooting motion, those fouls are also significantly down. And the thing that I just mentioned, defensive 3 seconds, is independent of foul calls, is independent of techs, and still that is way down. And there was a study a couple of years ago that said 98% of defensive 3 seconds in the last 2 minutes of a game are missed. The NBA's last 2-minute report of all the last 10 years or so that the NBA puts out these reports where they evaluate their officials and grade their officials on missed calls in the last 2 minutes, 2 possession games or whatever. That 98% of the defensive 3 second violations in those clutch moments, the referees miss. And it's just this crazy thing that, if you're a coach, you want to leverage that. It's like, hey, if we can gain an advantage and just have Kyle Lowry, he does this all the time. Andre Iguodala used to do this all the time. Draymond, they just camp out in the paint longer than the 3 seconds they're allowed. And there's so much going on in a clutch situation that referees just either they see it and they don't want to have that high leverage moment be called on a defensive 3 seconds, or they just can't possibly capture everything. So they miss it. And so, coaches are noticing this, GMs are noticing this, and that's the deceit factor is what they keep talking about, is they want to trust the league on these things, and they want to have a comfortability that when they go into a meeting with Joe Dumars or with whomever it be, or with referees before a game, meeting with referees, that they're telling them the truth, right? That they're not blowing smoke and they're just being real. And so what I think about is when Joe Dumars said, I don't really care. This was on the record. I think he said this to The Athletic a couple months ago. When asked about the high scoring totals, Ethan, he said something to the effect of, I don't care what the score is. I just want a competitive game. And that is interesting to me because the more scoring that there is, the less competitive the game.
Yeah.
If you have guys making 3-pointers all the time and it's a make or miss league and they're playing super fast and it's 100 possessions, the longer this goes out, the higher chance that it's going to be a blowout. And the shorter that goes out and you play that string, the higher chance you're going to have a tighter game. And so in some ways, by limiting the scoring, you're actually keeping a more competitive game because it's not so inflated anymore.
Yes.
And so you see the Knicks lose 79-73. That's a close game. But if they play, 20 more possessions, that 6-point lead might be 16 or 26. So the idea that the NBA does not care whether it's 150 or 77, I think it's interesting because if you want a more competitive game, cutting down on the scoring is a lot more effective.
Definitely. And it shows that there was a miscalculation or a misunderstanding about what people wanted when they turned the dial up to maximum scoring, because it's exciting offense. No, people like what offense looks like. They don't necessarily just react and do backflips over points being scored, which we discovered definitively this winter when guys were scoring over 70 and the audience just went, this is not that interesting to me. It just feels fake. It needs to feel closer to the platonic ideal of basketball. I think the platonic ideal of basketball is around 100. I think when you start getting into that early 2000s space where every game is in the 70s and 80s, people don't want that. And when you got into this space this season where the average score coming into the All-Star break was 115.7 and you're getting 140, 150 sometimes in a night, people don't want that either. They want it. It's fascinating to me. There is a platonic ideal. I think people like football in the 20s and 30s, right? I think people have their sense of what they want.
Yeah, well, one thing that I get into in this piece is at the end, my things started to come into focus. When you're writing and you're getting into the data and you're like, I don't know where I'm going with this. I don't want it to just be a data depository, just like here's a spreadsheet. It occurred to me these games with fewer foul calls, it also means we're having quicker games.
Yeah.
It means these games are getting over in 2 hours or even less, which is, it reminds me of the pitch clock in baseball, where the NBA Major League Baseball and the powers that be were like, people aren't watching as much. They don't want to sit through 3 hours of a game. Pitchers take way too much time between pitches. And they're grabbing their ass and they're spitting over here, and Nomar Garciaparras of the world are, tightening their batting gloves, and they're taking forever every pitch. They institute the pitch clock, and suddenly a whole swath of people are now more interested in watching baseball, not just because it feels quicker, but because the idea of a pitch clock is so much more alluring to them. And I do feel like the NBA, whether they intentionally did it or not, I'm going to keep couching it, Ethan. I asked Michael Bowie of Impredictable.com to look into this. And because of the lowered number of free throws and fouls, the stoppages of the game that put the brakes on the most beautiful basketball is jazz, it's actually shaving down the length of a game by 2 minutes. Last year, it was 2 hours. And last year in the pre-All-Star break, 2 hours and 13 minutes was an NBA game. Then in post-All-Star break, it lengthened by 2 minutes. The year before that, it lengthened by another 2 minutes. Like, the trend is that games get longer as the season goes on. This year, it's going in the opposite direction. And my question is that on purpose? Because I love it, Ethan. I love it. I'm covering these games on the West Coast. As an East Coaster, I'm like, man, these games, I'm going to bed instead of 2 a.m. I'm going to bed at 1:30. That 30 minutes is massive. And also, for fans, like young fans on the East Coast, like it's a tough sell to kids. Hey man, the game's going to start at 8:00 tonight. Let's watch it. That's a tougher sell. But if I know that these games are going to be faster, even if it's only 2 minutes, the principle of it, I think, might be a good marketing tool.
There's so much there. I mean, that's also a fascinating discovery, and I enjoy it too. I keep reacting to this the same way, which is that I enjoy the result as you do. And I guess to what you're saying when you're saying that I'm not going to go as far as the saying it was directed. You're doing this crazy thing. It breaks my brain, Tom, of all this overwhelming data that says that this was directed and intentional, and you're throwing it at me while not quite going there. So I put it to you, Tom. If it wasn't intentionally directed top down, what would be the possible plausible theory as to why something like this happened? Did they just manufacture? Did they start buying the whistles from some other manufacturer and it's shoddy and it only tweets every third blow? I mean, what is possibly the theory about what's happening if it's not directed from the top down?
So I'm not a statistician, but the most logical explanation here is this is just statistical noise, that this is a product of random variation. And we're looking at a string of 5 heads and saying, hey, that coin is weighted. It's unfair. And really what we're doing is we're paying attention to something that's not there. You're looking up at the sky, at the clouds, and you see a dragon. It's just a cloud, right? I'm in the works of trying to get, some real statisticians to dig into the data here and see if this is possibly just a statistical anomaly. That what we're seeing is, and that's why I'm couching this, is because I actually want to do the work. Okay. And secondly, we had Brian Windhurst on PTI yesterday with Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser. And immediately, like, Michael Wilbon is like, hey, this isn't enough time. See me in a month, and before I start saying that the referees are in on it, that they're cutting down on foul calls. Like this seems like not enough time. I'm going to buy some time here, and so there is this. Like I think some people just don't want to believe that the NBA could put their thumb on the pulse here and be able to say, like, we're going to change the game randomly and not tell the teams. And like I feel for the teams a little bit, like the coaches, they want, like,
oh God,
they want to know how to instruct Andrew Wiggins to go into the lane and draw a foul, or instruct Rudy Gobert how to wall up and defend without fouling, or Donovan Mitchell, if he's going and driving on Zion Williamson like he did last night, drawing contact 2 months ago, he gets that foul call and doesn't anymore. Well, they want to know that. There's an integrity of the game issue there at play. But the thing that I also think about is a coach talked to me the other day about this. Referees are a lot younger now. Why does that matter? Well, younger referees tend to not call as many fouls. If you look at the all-time leaders in foul rates, referees-wise, it's like Scott Foster, it's veteran guys. And typically that's because crew chiefs, the older veterans, finals veterans, the grizzled veterans, they take over a game because they have more purview of the game. And the older you are, the higher up you are in the hierarchy in a referee crew. There's 3 referees. And typically a younger referee will cede that, they'll delegate to the older referee and let them make those kind of borderline calls or whatever. So statistically, younger referees do call fewer foul calls. I know that to be true. I think last year when I looked into this, you're seeing a lot of referees leave the NBA. Or at least older referees are retiring and leaving. Kenny Maurer, Eric Lewis last year was resigned amid an investigation. And
that was an interesting one. A random resignation that had nothing to do with the burner account, but continue.
Yeah, the NBA said the investigation is thereby closed once he resigned. And so younger officials are now crew chiefs. And if those younger officials are less likely to call or blow their whistle because it's just they're younger or they're less, they're greener, maybe that's it. Maybe just this is who's the referee, not why they're calling fewer fouls. But I don't find that all too convincing. So it could be that younger referees also could be, as someone suggested to me when reporting this out, it's easier not to make a call.
Yeah.
Because
you know what? I feel like I'm inching closer and closer just to yelling liar, because I was just thinking to myself right now as we were talking that the NBA is not going to sue me. They don't want to get into any sort of discovery situation. There's absolutely no way. I feel like I could just let it fly at this point. Look, again, the official House of Strauss position on this particular topic is that it really, 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 really looks like they're lying. Just that's the official. If anybody wants to quote me out there in aggregation, that's the official position. Well, everybody else's position within the league is that they are. But yes, continue.
This ties into what I did with Pablo Torre a couple weeks ago. On Pablo Torre finds out, I found out, pun intended, that an NBA stat keeper in the late 90s figured out his name. He had cooked the books for his home team, the Vancouver Grizzlies, and boosted the stats for Sharif Abdur-Rahim and admitted to it in 2009 to Deadspin. Tommy Craggs did this huge story. And then I was like, who is this guy? I tracked him down. Turns out he's someone I know who worked at the Philadelphia 76ers, was in the Toronto Raptors front office as their analytics director, and then rose to become the executive VP of basketball operations for the Philadelphia 76ers. And I was like, my mind was blown. And I talked to Alex Rucker, and he was like, yeah, back in the 90s, it was kind of part and parcel of the NBA. A lot of the stat keepers like boosted the stats of their own guys, and it was kind of understood that that was part of the marketing mechanism of the NBA in the late 90s. And I asked him, do you think that's happening now? He's like, oh, no. Too many layers of checks and balances to make sure that there's no shenanigans going on, home cooking going on by the home stat keeper, giving their guys stats that they didn't deserve. But then when Pablo and I were talking about it, there's two kinds, and Alex mentioned this too, there's two kinds of like statistical manipulation, or at least scorekeeping manipulation. There's the like, hey, that block didn't happen, but we're going to give it to him anyway. And then there's the like behind the scenes manipulation of the game. Like the points of emphasis, the things that they're going to emphasize going into an NBA season. Do they want more scoring or less? Do they want more charges or less? Do we want more 3-pointers? Do we want to protect 3-point shots? That is a different kind of manipulation or inflation. And what we're seeing in the NBA right now, where free throws, teams are going through 3 entire quarters without getting a free throw. It feels like, we're not seeing like the home cooking that was prevalent in the late 90s.
Yeah.
But the kind of top-down tinkering, that's what GMs and coaches are worried about.
Yeah. Because you don't know when the spigot is going to be turned back on. I mean, what if Adam's grand plan, hypothetically, is that we go back to the first half of the season in the playoffs because, look, now the fans, they want it. They've been deprived of the points, so we're just going to turn it back on in the playoffs. Everybody's going to be wowed and amazed. And that's what Amazon told us to do. That's what they directed us to do. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think this is the way things should go, but it does have the sense of a change was implemented and nobody could anticipate that the results would be so obvious. It's almost like hypothetically they got what they wanted, good and hard, to quote Mencken, that they didn't necessarily anticipate that maybe cinching up some of this foul baiting would lead to a circumstance where you're getting the third fewest free throw rate month in NBA history, right?
And just to let you know, the free throw rate in general in the NBA this season is quite low. So it's not like it went from like top 10% in free throw rate down to the bottom 5%. Like in general this year, starting in today's NBA, there just aren't as many free throws. So just a caveat there that like we already didn't have a ton of free throws. And Joel Embiid being injured kind of matters a little bit. But I did this like little backhand analysis, back of the napkin analysis is there were 800 lost free throws after the All-Star break. If things continued the way it was pre-All-Star break, there would be 800 more free throws in today's NBA. Post All-Star break, where did those 800 go? Where do they come from? Which players, which teams are losing all those extra free throws that they previously had?
This was the Simmons. This was the Bill Simmons focus, which I think is very much the fan focus. It's just cui bono.
Is that how it's said? Who benefits? Yes, continue.
And it's huge that Joel Embiid is not playing. So it just so happens that this scoring binge happens. Joel Embiid gets hurt, and then the biggest team with the biggest drop in their free throws is the Philadelphia 76ers. However, that only explains like 80 of the 800 free throws. So if 10% of the decline is attributed to Joel Embiid getting hurt and the 76ers offense is garbage now, that doesn't explain all of it. So I think, so I didn't write this, but I'll say it here. This feels weird to write. It's
Maze,
this is a software medium.
Maze, get ready to clip this. Get ready to clip whatever's going to happen from Tom right here. Let's hear it.
No, please don't clip. Okay, fine, whatever. I got a text from a GM who said, okay, let me pull it up here. You may get a Pulitzer. And I said, for what? And like, I'm like, what is this? I hadn't talked to this person in like months. And you may get a Pulitzer, spotting the scoring manipulation. And I'm like, are they not able to just talk to the league about this? So Shams Charania is asking Shams Charania is reporting now that the competition committee is now looking into how to give the defense a little bit of an edge, and that they're going to reevaluate this in the offseason, and that they're going to test some things here. And I'm sitting here being like, I kind of feel like it's already happening. Yeah. Like that they're testing some things out. And we're seeing, I think, positive reviews from you and other people that kind of feel like this is the NBA I grew to love, and I want the defense to compete. I want there to be some physicality, but there are downsides to that. You're seeing a lot more altercations in the league, and there are people in the league who feel like those altercations at the end of the games are a direct result of them not keeping referees in line, or referees not keeping players in line. If you don't call those fouls, the physicality goes down. I mean, if you call those fouls, the physicality goes down, and you're not going to get these sort of fracases breaking out.
Yeah, I can picture Adam Silver. I understand that we've been calling the games a bit looser. We did not anticipate that it would lead to an end of game situation with Draymond doing a flying karate kick, but we continue to look and refine. I feel like just talk about it, Adam. You can drown everything in boring. You can just admit it. Look, here's what I'm telling you. And again, the position again is that it really, 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 really looks like they're lying. Just I don't know, like just say it. Just say it. Just say that it's happening. It's okay. If we can accept it, what bad thing? Nothing bad is going to happen. I think transparency is key right here, and we can all just move on with this, or maybe don't, because it's given good material to Tom and myself. I mean, I've never had such animated conversations with GMs as we continue to drop names, you and me back and forth. I got distracted a few minutes ago.
I did not drop a name, by the way. I did not.
I know, but you're dropping a status, when you're talking to the GMs. But I got a call from a GM like while we were talking. This is such a topic behind the scenes. Basketball itself has changed. Does it alter your perception, Tom? I want to bring you out of one zone to another zone. You've been in the zone of information man. I want the opinionist. I want the basketball lover. We've been getting this narrative that all the scoring explosion is because the past, man, it can't really measure up to right now. And the skills these players have, oh boy, this is why they're breaking record after record and they're scoring 70 points and everything else. Now that we've seen the dial get turned the other direction and all of a sudden the scores start looking more like the 1990s, does it alter your perspective on how advanced the skills got in the league, or do you feel the same way as you felt?
I liken this to baseball a lot. The three true outcomes in baseball of strikeout, home run, and walks. are the three true outcomes. And the Moneyball-ification of baseball made it such that baseball teams were now leveraging that and trying to strike out everybody, throwing 105 miles an hour and hitting the ball out of the park and going for walks. And they figured out, they solved baseball. And they're doing this, they're doing the shift because they're figured out where the likelihood, the spray charts of where the ball is going to go. And then I'm like, yeah, that's a win for math. That's a win for analytics. It's a win for sabermetrics. And all of the nerds are winning. And then I found myself on the other side of that, being like, but it kind of sucks to watch baseball. If there's no one fielding plays, you're not going to see.
Totally agree.
You're not going to see.
I was down to kill the shift. I totally agree. Sorry, I'm interrupting you because I'm so enthusiastic about what you're saying. Other people said, oh, just hit it where they ain't. And I go, look, I want certain expectations of the sport honored. When I see a ball rocketed up the middle of the infield at 110 miles an hour, that needs to be a hit. That just needs to be a hit. I don't like this stuff where it's not a hit. I don't like when the contact is made with the bat and I have zero sense of whether it might be a hit. That's a very niche complaint that I have. I have weird niche baseball complaints. I hate the Houston Stadium because I have zero sense when the ball is hit the left field how far the home run went because there's just nothing back there. That's like I've got weird, like I want to know the physics and geography of what's going on in the game, but I feel like I'm not alone in this. And I think that banning the shift is such an aesthetic improvement, and you often need to analyze your sport this way as to what makes the sport seem real and good. And you just always, it's like you just need some sort of balance between whatever. I don't want to make this a political thing, but it's almost like you need a balance between conservatism and liberalism, or progress and conserving. You want to conserve the aspects of the game that people truly love, and then necessarily make the adjustments and kind of prune the rough edges away that are holding the game back. And it's not easy to find that balance, but you should always be seeking that balance. And I think the NBA dramatically erred in going more points good. I think that was a misread on what actually connects with people.
The connective tissue to baseball here, and the analogy I'm trying to make is the spread pick and roll and 5-out system might be the most efficient way to score. But when we have the entire league doing something like that, that's a problem
that too. Yep.
And if it's strikeout or home run or walk and no balls in play and no fielding and no diving and no running around and no suspense about what happens, then you want to be surprised. You want to be like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens next. And in basketball, I feel like the make or miss aspect of it is not great if everyone's doing the same thing. I'm not saying that it's a homogenous style of basketball, but I do get the sense that there's a kind of a trade-off of you want players to be operating the most efficient as possible, but we want some more variety too.
Yeah.
If one area of the game, the mid-range, is just abandoned completely and we're just going for foul calls and three-pointers, that sucks for the viewer. It's not as fun. And the second thing is, I think free throws are boring. I don't want free throws. It is a thorn in my ass when you stop the play and then you got to go to the free throw line or you got to go to a review. I don't want that stuff in basketball. And Kevin Arnovitz wrote a great story about imagining a world in which there's no free throws. And that, or if you do go to the free throw line, it's only for one shot. You make it, you get 2. You miss it, it's 0. Because his opinion, and I'm fully on board with this, the worst part of the game is when guys are standing around grabbing their knees and heaving and trying to catch their breath. That's the worst part of basketball. So going away from that aesthetically, I'm all for.
Well, but this is where it gets tricky with sports and the conserving versus the progress, because I agree with you. I feel like there is no way we would have free throws as presently constituted if we were inventing basketball today. Somebody would go, yeah, it's really boring. Or if they didn't already exist, if we had a system where you got fouled and they automatically awarded you points, right? If that already existed and you went, hold up. I've got an idea. how about instead of the automatic point guarantee, how about we stop the game, we all stand around, and you've got two individuals like that. No, get out of here. That's super boring. At the same time, getting rid of it seems like it would be too dramatic a change for people. And so there are some aspects that just due to familiarity, you keep. And you can't necessarily reform for the sake of aesthetics. I'm very much open to the 1 for 2 idea. I know some people listening will probably disagree and they'll have their reasons for it. Because I think 1 for 2 or, 1 for 3, depending on the situation, it gives you a chance to rest and get that breather while not being too long. I think that's a good compromise there. And I know some people will disagree. But it's funny. There are these aspects to the game that just continue to linger on because we're used to it. Extra points in football. I guess it did matter, sadly.
Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me started.
It did matter in the Super Bowl.
Kickers should be banned in football.
Whoa. Kickers should be banned in football.
It's not football. I'm sorry.
It's literally football. It's literally
that was literally football in 1800s or whenever the football was. What we want is Patrick Mahomes deciding a game, not Harrison Butker. I'm sorry. I don't want a Martin Gramatica deciding a football game when he's not on the field for 90% of it. Like we've talked about this. Maze is probably giggling right now because we talked about it, I think, on another pod. But the idea of like, we're going down to the final seconds here. It's Cavs Warriors 2016. Now let's bring in Michael Phelps to swim a lap in the pool. May's saying, bring out the bowler off the bench and go knock down 10 pins. That's what kicking is in football. They have no influence on the game. They're not Pat Mahomes or a defensive lineman or a defensive back. That's football, right? And if you want to be like, if you want to be a stickler on like, oh, the name has football in it, I don't care.
No, I don't care about that. I don't care about that. But part of the beauty of football is the agony of all the potential decisions that you could make and the push-pull of it all. And that sense of, oh my God, do we kick here? Do we bring this guy out, this weird random nerd who doesn't even play the sport, and he'll decide our fate? Or do we keep it in the hands of our incredible quarterback? And sometimes you got to bring the weird nerd out. I think that it's all about painful predicaments in the big poker game that is football. You get rid of the kicker, you get rid of that. You got to have the kicker, Tom. I mean,
why do we not want another down of Pat Mahomes? I don't understand. Like, we don't want another 25% more Pat Mahomes and Josh Allen and your boy Brock Purdy. Like, you don't want 25% or more of them trying to go for it on 4th down so they don't have to bring out a punter. And we're already legislating out punting and kicking. And now, like, it just seems like we're already going in that direction. And I'm sorry for the Pat McAfees of the world out there. I don't want to put you out of a job, but there are sports for people who can kick the ball really far. There are. And I feel like we're going to be, in 10 years, we should be at a point where we should be encouraging Tom Brady and Justin Jefferson and Christian McCaffrey to be on our TV screen more, not less. That's my argument.
This is you're falling for what the NBA fell for. This idea that I just want more. Can we just build the plane out of the black box? Why don't we just build the plane out of the black box? You can't build the plane out of the black box. You gotta have a bit of balance, Tom. I think you gotta have the kickers. You gotta have the agony of when to make the decision. It's too radical. But here's the thing about the NFL. The NFL is perfectly situated, unlike the NBA, to make these reforms and changes, because what's going to happen? People aren't going to watch. People are going to watch. People are going to watch no matter what. If there are 20 games, if there are 19 games, if they ban the kicker, if they ban the punter, if they ban kickoffs, it all just seems marginal if it has an adverse effect at all, versus the NBA, where it just feels like the inventory sports are just fighting for their life right now, and every choice they make matters, and they can't screw it up. And if stuff goes wrong, you have to make a secret reform. Here's what I think the NBA is doing, Tom, as you will not admit what we can so plainly see, sir. I feel like what the NBA did is you analogize it to the pitch clock. Here's what's going on in the NBA right now. It's like they instituted a pitch clock without telling anybody in the middle of the season, and people keep remarking on it, and they just keep going as the thing is ticking, and it's on the TV screen. They're just going, no, we didn't. Nope. That pitchers they're just pitching quicker. I don't know why. I mean, look, it's great. The games are going quicker, but
defenders are just defending legally more now. Right.
No, we didn't. Yeah.
The players have been conditioned to not foul bait anymore. That Luka and Devin Booker and whoever it is are less. And Trae Young got hurt too. Not just Joel Embiid, but Trae Young is also out. So
it's like
this could just be foul hunters and the grifters are out.
Mad Fred is saying, like, look, we don't know why teams stopped doing the shift. I guess it was just a strategic decision that these teams made. They looked at the information, and it's Madden is no longer managing a team. Is he managing a team? I have no idea if he's still managing. I don't know. But yeah, they're not doing it anymore, and we don't know why. We have no clue as to what happened. So there's a believability problem is what I would say to the whole thing.
Well, the whole thing is based on trust, right? It's not just trust in the rules. It's trust in what you're watching, trust in the marketplace. North Carolina just opened sports betting like last week. And as all of this is going on, someone was texting me like, dude, you should quit what you're doing, just bet, because you seem like you're ahead of the game here. Like your statistical analysis, you'd be able to be ahead of these trends and make a whole bunch of money. And I don't want to do that. But I understand what people, when they see these statistical trends and they go right into their betting app. And I think you and Glass-Spiegel, you talked about it, right? Yeah. That he bet the unders on a night and it didn't work out for him.
No, yeah. He went into the middle of Saudi Arabia in the summer and got rained on. He didn't win on these unders. I have no idea, but it didn't work out for him. But he tried. But what Glass-Steagall goes through is what a lot of people do. I think the big myth about sports betting, a lot of people just assume that you can't win. What they don't understand is that if you actually study and treat it like a job, it's really easy if you're a smart person to beat the house. The problem is what happens once you start beating the house. You can't get bets down. The people I know who do this professionally spend way more time and energy on getting bets down than on getting an edge. Getting the edge is the easy part. The hard part is that they don't actually let you win, and you need to figure out a way around that.
Beards.
Yeah.
I didn't know what a beard was. I did not know about this whole concept until I think Bob Voulgaris put me onto it because I had no idea. But the whole thing is, there's a trust thing, and for me, I feel like I see it. It might be confirmation bias, and I think Ryan and Bill were talking about this. Is maybe because I know that referee or foul calls are going down, I see it more often. Those 50-50 calls are going to the defender rather than the offensive player. It reminds me, like, my wife and I, we struggled to get pregnant. Oh, this is weird tangent. We were trying to have kids, and when we got back,
love that euphemism. Always a fun euphemism to use with the in-laws. We're trying.
We're trying.
And they go,
we're sleeping
that's
together.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. You're trying. That's wonderful.
That's so great. Is it working? Yeah. Is it working? Are you trying tonight? Like, everything okay?
Should we watch your kids for you? Is it, yes, you were saying.
So I'm like, I remember the first meeting with our fertility doctor or whatever. They were like, oh yeah, you're pretty much, it's going to be very hard for you to have kids. On the way home from that doctor's office, that appointment, I swear to you, we saw like 50 pregnant moms walking around Miami. And we just were like, they're everywhere. But pregnant people are just rubbing it in our faces that we can't have kids. And I remember just thinking, wait, no, this is confirmation bias. This is what confirmation bias looks like, is when you are looking for something, you will find it. And so that's what I'm guarding against here, is doing my best to not suffer from confirmation bias when I'm watching these games. But that's what the data is for. And that's what TomTheFinder.com is for, is to check out the data and see if what your eyes are telling you is real. And what I'm seeing is that foul calls are down, techs are down, defensive 3 seconds are down. And the question is, why?
That's a great little plug. Real quick, because you got to get out of here. You got to hard out. I wrote that Michael Jordan is the GOAT, the perpetual GOAT, the Lindy GOAT. That article is up and free for everybody to read. I feel like you feel differently. I don't know if you do, but I feel like you do. Who's your GOAT, Tom? Give us that answer in a couple minutes.
What about in a couple weeks?
Oh,
now that's a tease. That's a tease.
You're gonna go deep dive.
I would say I don't feel like I need to be on a team. The politicization of LeBron versus MJ or the GOAT debate. I don't want to have to subscribe to one side or the other and not be able to have like a nuanced conversation about it. It seems like you're either team LeBron or team MJ and you're painting me into a corner. And I'm not willing to do that until you see my next piece that I'm going to be dropping at Yahoo Sports at some point in the next couple weeks. So watch out for that.
We might just have to find you when you do it. I'm like, what am I doing? Why did I do that? The Finder, it's a great Substack. Dude, you're doing a great job right now. And you're an idiot for not just gambling with all your knowledge, but we all benefit from it. And you've been on this, and hey, credit to you. It's excellent. Normally I hate when my subscribers read other Substacks. I jealously guard against that and instruct them not to, but I will make an exception in this case because your work has been fantastic. So thanks for coming on, Tom. Can't wait to see what you got coming for us in the near future.
Yeah, thanks. And appreciate it. I will say I'm trying to grow out my hair, and I actually do think that gray is good. I actually like the fact that I got a little bit gray in my beard. And so I'm debating, but I also feel like bald people age better because you can't really tell. So just to end on that note is I think I'm going to keep this look going, but you keep that gray. I like gray. I think the Anderson Cooperification of America is good.
Yeah. No, it's fine. I need a haircut. I look like I'm from the 1970s. Anyway, yeah. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Ethan.